mean, so for the guys who hasn't attended one of my lectures before and so on, I'm Kobus Minnaar or Jacobus Minnaar on Facebook. I've been posting in your country's groups if you've got this message anyway. Yeah, I'm admin on several pig groups throughout Africa, and belong to about 52 pig groups throughout the world. I'm from South Africa originally. I moved to New Zealand 25 years ago, and for the last 4 years been back in Botswana and so on. I've worked at very big farms and so on. I'll just take myself out of the way there. So they've got good experience, hand-on experience in very big piggeries and so on. So which accounts for a lot more experience than doing little bits for a longer period of time and so on. Yeah, so I worked in 500 sow units and had my own piggeries along the way. Okay, just a few interesting facts about pigs that you might not know about. The first animal ever to be domesticated was the pig 6,000 years ago. They were domesticated long before sheep and goats and cattle and so on. Now, we'll talk about domestication just now a bit more and so on. And as anybody who's ever worked with pigs know that they are very intelligent. They reckon it's the intelligence of a 3-year-old human, so 3-year-old toddler's intelligence, and ranked third just after the apes and dolphins in intelligence and so on. They also got incredible smelling sense. They used to smell truffles. Truffles is a fungus that grows under the ground, and they can smell the truffle from under the ground. The problem is they don't often use pigs, because when the pig finds it, it eats it too, and its truffles are more valuable than gold per weight and so on. So they usually use dogs or they muzzle the pig so they can't eat it once they found it and so on. But yeah, 2,000 times better smell sense than humans. They're also the closest animal to humans in anatomy and physiology. For years, people did physiology, did hormones and things, trials on rats. And after doing a lot of work, they found out that nothing could be further from humans in their physiology than rats and so on, and humans. So I worked at the Pig Research Unit at Massey University, and most of our trials were done on pigs, but for humans. So drug withholding trials and digestion trials and a lot of other things. Pig organs have also been transplanted into humans. Pig hearts and so on can keep you alive for a month or 2, 3 until a human heart becomes available. The thing is about pigs, their organs are just about the same size for the same weight as humans and so on. There's 1 or 2 exceptions to that. The one is the lungs. The lungs are much smaller than ours. And putting together that that they do not have sweat glands, it makes for a dangerous thing. And we spoke about the problem with heat in our piggery design part 2 weeks ago. If you haven't seen that yet, go back to it. The design of piggeries and basic principles of piggery design. So they were also used in warfare. You think, what can a pig do in warfare? Well, a few hundred years ago, they were used. The people that had fortifications around cities and so on, city walls, and that when they laid siege to a city, they had people who dug tunnels under the walls. And then they would chase a whole lot of pigs in there, fat pigs, and then they would set them alight, and they would burn like candles, and it would heat the rocks and it would create a weakness, and then the wall would cave in. In modern times, they use them to smell out gunpowder and explosives and so on in minefields. So they're a very versatile animal and so on. And the other thing that you will know if you ever handled pigs and so on, when they squeal, it is ear bursting and so on. It's hard, it's louder than a jet engine taking a jet plane taking off and so on. It's also the most consumed meat in the world, not so in Africa. We'll have a look at the figures there as well. But there's more than 2 billion pigs in the world, of which more than half is in China. So China's got about 1/5 of the world's people, but they've got more than half of the world's pigs and so on. The Chinese really like pigs and so on. They also, even with that many pigs, they are also the biggest importer of pork in the world and so on. They reckon that all the pork that comes onto the international market isn't even half of what China could consume and so on. The only problem is they buy it from the cheaper countries that can produce it cheaply and has cheaper food and so on. So Botswana has fallen off the wagon there, and quite a few countries in Africa as well. So yeah, and then the Chinese eat an incredible amount of pork per person per year and so on. In Botswana, the consumption, the per capita consumption is less than 1 kilo. I can sit down in one breakfast and eat 1 kilo of bacon all by myself. But yeah, the average Botswana do not. They prefer beef and other meats and so on. But the beef price is going through the roof, and it's sort of bringing pork back on the menu and so on. Okay, sorry, let me just on the side. So the question is, how do I start? Guys ask this every day on Facebook groups throughout Africa and throughout the world and so on. My recommendation, guys, is begin small. That you do not want to spend a whole lot of capital and then fail because you haven't got the experience or you didn't start with the right breeding stock and facilities and so on. So start small, and as you go through the process, learn. So if you make a mistake and it costs you money, it's not bankrupting you. It gives you a chance to learn without bankrupting you in the process and so on. So if you start with a few sows, I'm talking 1, 2, 3 type of thing, because it limits the money that if you make a mistake that you're going to lose, but it also gets you into production quicker and so on. The other option is to buy weaners, but good quality weaners, that as in your future breeding stock and so on, and then as they grow up, you learn with them. You grow, your knowledge grows with them. And by the time they are ready to give birth, you've basically gone through one production cycle and so on. So you learn as you go type of thing. So the other thing is, guys, do not build a piggery and then buy gilts and then get them mated and so on, because you've lost 3-4 months in the process. Build 1 or 2 pens. You can keep 10 gilts in a pen and so on, and that's 1 pen. Now you've got gilts, you get them mated and so on, and now you've got 3 months and 3 weeks to build the second pen and so on. So get them mated so they start coming closer to earning you money and so on. Don't finish building. It take you 2-3 months to finish building and then only start breeding them and so on. So time is very important when you start, because it takes you a year from starting to breed till you've got your baconers for sale on the other end. So in that time, money is going out, nothing is coming in unless you sell compost. We'll talk about that in the upcoming series, in this series as well, in a different part. But yeah, you've got nothing coming in and lots going out. And so on. The other thing is, guys, if you buy 5 sows, do not all make them at the same time. Firstly, you're going to run your boars battery flat, and some of them are going to, well, most of them are going to return to service, and the ones who do a farrow are going to have small litters and so on. But sorry. Sorry, I think I've got Alzheimer's on. Lose my place. Yeah, so space them out. The idea with spacing them out, the piggeries are run on a weekly basis. and so on. If you've got a 25 sow unit, you've got 1 litter born, weaned, farrow, being born and going to the abattoir every week of the year, and so on. So if you've got half of that many sows, so if you've 12 sows, then you're looking at 1 litter every 2 weeks. If you've got 6 sows, you're looking at 1 litter every 4 weeks. And space them out. The idea with that is, firstly, it gives you maximum use of your facilities. It's not overflowing some parts of the year and empty other parts of the year. So it's efficient use of space. And let's say you can put more pigs through your piggery in a year. It also gives you an income that down the track, the pigs that's born today is being fed by the ones who's just going to the abattoir now. So you've got a income paying for the ones in the pipeline. Otherwise, there's a guy on Facebook who had 5 gilts and had them all mated and had 50 piglets. Well, I think he had 2 boars, but he got sort of 2 months in, and he just couldn't afford to feed 50 piglets and so on. And he had to sell them. And guys, it takes 10 weeks for a pig to reach 20 kilos. In the next 10 weeks, he gets to 100 kilos. So you can see, if you have to sell them at 10 weeks, you're losing money and so on. You've got to get them to a maximum weight to get maximum profit. That's a fact of life and so on. Okay, so build what you need first, and then you've got time to do the next pen that you're going to be needing. Of course, at the end of the 3.5, 4 months and so on, you need a farrowing pens, but you've got 4 months to build one, and you build the next thing that you're going to need, and so on. Okay, the other thing is, guys, so once you get to 25 sows and you've got a litter born every week, from there on to double up and to get bigger, it's easy, because you just hold your best gilt from every litter, and in a year you've got twice as many sows. And if you keep on doing that, in a year you've got, again, so 25, 50, in 2 years you can have 100 sows. So by keep on doing that, but it's getting to that first 25 that and the learning that goes with it to get into production and so on. I've started piggeries in 3 different countries from scratch, been through this process quite a few times. The other thing is, guys, do not get funding, resign your job, and then start farming, because for a year you've got no other income. I've always worked till my piggery was getting up 4 o'clock in the morning, feeding pigs, going to work, after work, go back, mix food, wash out again, and so on. So work double time until you are in production, until you got your first income. Don't stop work before that, because it will kill you in the short run. Okay. Okay, sorry, this is, let me just make this a little bit bigger for you. All I want, so this is pork consumption through countries in the world and so on. Interesting enough, in Africa, the biggest pork consumers in Africa is Angola. I didn't know that, actually, till this morning. And second is South Africa. So it's, the Angolans eat 6.1 kilogram per person per year. Okay, that's for every person from just born to just dying, and so on. But Botswana's per capita consumption is less than a kilogram. So South Africa is second, and so on, with 4.9, and Angola 6.1. Then you've got all your Latin American countries, which eat a lot more than anybody in Africa. And of course, by far the most is China, and all your Eastern Bloc countries, Vietnam, and all the Eastern countries and so on, love pork as well, and so on. The Europeans too, they eat. So as an average over the world, pork is the most consumed meat of all meats, including chicken, pork, pig, sheep, goat, and so on. Okay, so this is Africa's annual meat consumption, and the little grey stripe there on the left is the pork. and so on. So by far the most meat eaten in Africa is poultry, then beef, then sheep. I haven't got goats in here, but sheep, and then your pork is that little grey stripe in the middle. So you can see African countries or people in Africa do not eat a lot of pork and so on. Now, on the production side, the production volume of pork meat in Africa, the biggest producer is Nigeria. Also, and then very close behind them is South Africa. So the one is 301, 303, sorry, a bit small, and South Africa 302. But of course, Nigeria has got a much bigger population than South Africa. That's why the South Africa's per capita consumption is more than Nigeria. But I mean, we've got Angola there again, Uganda's there, and the biggest growth in pork consumption is Malawi. And so on. That was also news to me until this morning when I did a bit of research and so on. Okay, now guys, when you're producing pigs and it takes you 8 months to produce a porker, you are not making a cent. I can guarantee you, you're not making a cent. If you try and get cheap food and it takes you 8 months to produce a porker, you're not making a cent. I'm producing a 100-kilogram pig at 22 weeks of age, 100+ kilo. This can be done. This is done. I'm doing it right now, and so on. So, guys, a guy asked me on Facebook once. He asked me, "How can I save on my feed cost?" And my answer to him was, "Feed them more." And the guy said, "No, you didn't understand the question correctly." I said, "No, I did," and so on. We'll talk about feeding in the upcoming series as well, and I'll show you how that works and so on. But yeah, so here's industry standard growth rates and so on. You need to know that at 16 weeks, at 17 weeks, they need to be 70 kilos and so on. If they're not, you've got a problem. Either it's your genetics or your feed or the amount of food or the quality of food or health issues and so on. But knowing that you've got a problem is a good start. If you don't know you've got a problem, you cannot fix it and so on. So know what industry standard is so that you know, hey, I've got a problem, and then start looking for it. Okay. Now, let's talk about domestication. How did we get from that hairy thing in the top left corner there, the sort of the European boar, to what we know as a pig today, and so on? Of course, 6,000 years ago, one of those were caught. We bred them with less hair. The other thing that you'll notice of all wild animals, if you think about the American bison, if you think about the African buffalo, even the water buffalo and so on, they all got big shoulders and small asses. We wanted more at the back and less in the front. The front in nature is used to fight. That's why they have a heavy set front. The ass is sort of just flapping around in the wind at the back there, but because they need the front end to be heavy. But guys, if you take this pig at the bottom here and you cut it through vertically just in front of the penis there, so you're cutting the carcass in half, 70% of the carcass value is in the back half. 70%, which means the front half is only 30% of the value, and so on. That is why we wanted to breed it with bigger asses and smaller front ends and so on. So what is domestication? Now, firstly, domestication is not taming the animal. The Indian elephants in India and so on, they used to cart logs around, is never been domesticated. They are caught as babies, they are tamed, and they use them and they die and they catch another one, and so on. So domestication means humans have changed them to suit us. The oryx, which was the first sort of the forefathers of cattle and so on, were twice the size, vicious as hell, and we couldn't handle them. So we caught one, made it, that we tamed it, we bred through years, we bred it smaller and it killed the wild ones and kept the docile ones, and we changed them through domestication. So I said this started with pigs 6,000 years ago, and so we've had a lot of time to change them. Now, the breeding companies reckon that they are making 2% progress per year in growth rates, in fertility, and so on. And they do that when they start breeding. They use a boar once. Next time, they use his son. His son is the upgrade. It's like laptops. You buy one this year, top of the line. Next year, there's one that's twice as fast and cheaper than what you paid last year, and so on. That's the upgrade. So his son is the upgrade. So they use him one, kill him. Next time, within 7, 8 months, they use his son to upgrade to get that fast gains that they're making through breeding in the breeding companies and so on. Okay, so now breeds. Everyone asks, what is the best breed to start with? The short answer is the one that you like the most. If you like something, you do a better job of looking after it than when you do not like it, and so on. But so in the top 4 in growth rates, in fertility, and so on, is the Duroc, the large white, and the landrace. The large white, they also, the American large white, they call a Yorkshire, and so on. It's basically took the British large white and upgraded it a little bit and so on. So the one that we know as large white is basically the American version of the large white, and so on. But each one of these have got a superpower. You know, like Superman can fly and he's got laser eyes, and Speedy Gonzales got wings on his feet, and so on. Each one of these have got a superpower. So let's start with the landrace in the top right-hand corner. Big floppy ears, long body, and so on. Known to be the best milk producers, the best mothers. They have longer bodies, and which gives you more place for teats and a better spacing of the teats so that the babies can get access to it. Do you know that a landrace can have up to 2 extra sets of ribs? Because they're longer, they actually got more ribs than the other breeds, and so on. So not many people know that, and so on. But on the negative side, they are very susceptible to stress and heat. If it gets too hot, they die. If you stress them out, loading and so on, you end up with one when you get a dead one when you get to the abattoir and so on. They also don't last very long. They're 2, 3, 4 parities, then they sort of worn out. Because they have such big litters, they wear themselves out and so on. But they are always used as the mother breed in crossbreeding. And so on. So that's your landrace. Let's go back to the Duroc. Now, the Duroc is reddish in color. It's got more prickly ears and so on. The skin is actually white. That red is the hair. And we'll talk about coloring just now again. But Duroc are known as the fastest growing pig out there. It's also that color, of course, is a plus point if you're doing that outdoor piggery and so on. It's less sunburn and those kind of things. But as I said, the skin is white. So when they scolded the pig, it's white. But the hair follicles is red. So it looks like it's got measles. And the average housewife seeing it in a plastic packet on the shopping shelf say, it's got measles. I don't want it. And so on. But by far the fastest grower. Also the best, because it's growing the fastest, it's also got the best feed conversion, which means it takes less food to put on 1 kilo of weight. Then it's got marbling. Now, marbling is fat, but not fat under the skin. It's fat inside the meat. So when you cook it, it doesn't go dry. It stays moist and so on. So very nice tasting, nice soft marbling in your Duroc meat and so on. Very stress tolerant. Also a bit... boars get very aggressive. Well, not always aggressive towards people and so on, but they're very eager to work, and sometimes they get a bit rough and so on. But yeah, at the end of the day, I believe it's how you handle them, how they react to you, and so on. The problem with Duroc is the color and so on. They are not such good mothers as the other 2 breeds and so on. But So they use them, the Durocs, as in the terminal crosses, and we'll talk about terminal crosses just now. So all three of these have got large litters. They all got good growth rates. They all got good carcasses. They all got good feed conversion. But each one has got this special thing that the others don't have, and so on. So the large white is sort of the all-rounder. Now, it is especially good for bacon. Now, if you look at those two pigs a bit under and above each other, we said the landrace is longer but narrower from the back line to the belly line. It's narrower than the large white. Now, how does that make a difference? Guys, the most expensive cut in a pig is the spare ribs. Every restaurant in the world wants to serve spare ribs, and there's only about 1 kilo on each side of the pig. So it's not because it's such a fantastic cut, but it's because there's very limited amount of it. There's one spur restaurant in Botswana, in Gabs, and Gaborone is a small city compared to world capitals and so on. One spur uses more than 1 ton a week of spare ribs. And so, of course, that's imported because we do not produce that many pigs, and so on, to provide every restaurant with 1 ton of spare ribs and so on. So with a wider body, you can actually get 2 strips of spare ribs out of the land after a large white compared to the land race. And it's also that it's got more belly. That belly is sort of a bit behind the ribs and in front of the back legs. So it's more belly bacon, which is the best bacon. You get leg bacon, you get flank bacon, you get back bacon, but the best is your flanks. Streaky bacon comes out of that part in the second half in front of the back leg. Okay, so good bacon type, a good overall, the mates good with everything, a good dual-purpose breed, and so on. So as I said, end of the day, the best breed is the one that you like the most. But now, guys, every day you get people who want purebred animals, as if a purebred is fantastic. Guys, purebred does not make an animal good. That's like saying all Tswanas are 7 foot tall. That's nonsense. I've seen 3 foot tall Tswanas, and I've seen 8 foot tall Tswanas, and so on. But there's a range. It actually forms a bell curve, and I'll show you that later on, and so on. To make progress or to select animals for breeding, you want to breed with the best of the breed. Breeding the best of one breed with the best of other breed, and then you get genetic gain. Just crossing 2 different breeds does not necessarily give you better pigs, and so on. Breeding the best of 2 breeds gives you a better cross. Now, guys, most of you have heard about hybrid vigor. Now, it is a fact that the F1 cross, the first cross between 2 pure breeds, are superior to both breeds in all the production parameters. Faster growth, better feed conversion, better litter sizes, all of those. So why would you want to farm with a pure breed if the crosses are better? Now, there's a bit of a misunderstanding here as well. So now people are sort of getting over the wanting a pure breed. Now they want the F1, only your F1, as if the F2 is worse. Guys, having the maximum hybrid vigor in the F1 does not mean that the F2 has got less hybrid vigor. It just means that there isn't any more to be had, and so on. Now, most breeding companies use a 3-way cross. Okay, so they all start with the F1. So, and it's usually the landrace mother, because it's got good mothering abilities, with a large white father, and that gives you the F1. Also use the PIC calls them the Canberra crosses and so on. It's just the F1, large white landrace cross and so on. And as I said, they are superior to both the other breeds. And most breeding companies sell the F1 crosses as breeding stock for multipliers like us, and so on. But the next step is, so there again, you've got the landrace sow and the large white boar, and it gives you the F1 landrace large white cross, the F1. Then they cross it with a Duroc. Why? Because then the babies grow faster and so on. So that's called a terminal cross, because all the offspring goes to the abattoir. So it's called a terminal cross. Now, if you go to breeding companies, they've got all different numbers of boars and so on. And it's just boar lines that is selected for certain traits. Some is leaner, some is faster growing, some has got more muscling and so on. So that's where the breeding company numbers come in and so on. But so not all terminal sires are Durocs. So they breed terminal lines. And the difference between a terminal, when they're breeding boars, they have different selection criteria to breeding gilts. You do not want a gilt to look like a bodybuilder, lean, mean, muscly, and so on, because then she doesn't have enough back fat on she's unable to produce enough back fat to milk from during lactation and so on, and then she doesn't produce enough milk and they can't feed the babies and so on. So when they sell you gilts, they select gilts on a different set of criteria to when they're breeding boars. Of course, boars, they want fast growth, they want lean growth, and those babies usually go to the abattoir. So this is now an F2. So once you've crossed the F1 with the Duroc, you've got an F2 cross, and as I say, they usually go to the abattoir. Not always. I've had F2s before, sold by POC in New Zealand and so on. So other crosses and so on, they also use landrace to Duroc. Of course, the landrace again being the mother and the Duroc father. So then your F1 is the landrace Duroc cross, and it's got 50% Duroc and 50% landrace. Then they mate it back to a white breed. Guys, this is very important. If you use a Duroc boar more than once, it's got more than 50% Duroc in it. The problem with that is the color. Now, this picture on the left corner, those gilts, that's a three-way cross, the F2, and I've got some of those. There's nothing wrong with them. When you've scalded that pig, the carcass is perfectly white. The color in the skin is in the outside layer, the epidermis, and so on. So when you scalded it, that epidermis comes off, and you've got a white carcass. The problem is if you take that pig and you mate it back to a Duroc, then you get color in the deeper layers. So now possibly you can get a chop on a supermarket in a packet with plastic over, and there's a chop with a black spot. Now the average house, well, if you find one that you might say, it's just color and so on, but the average housewife will pull up her nose and she won't buy it. So a lot of abattoirs and processors and so on do not want that extra color and so on. So use a Duroc once. Do not use him back to those spotty F2s and so on. Now, if you mate that F1 back to a Duroc and so on, sorry, the F2s back to a Duroc, then you'll get color, everything from pitch black to completely white, to brown, to spotty, to black and white, to black, brown, and white, and anything in between. And the thing is, guys, the color of these on these pigs are in the deeper layers of the skin, and you start getting problems with color and from your the buyers of your pigs and so on. Okay, so use it once and not anymore. Okay, so guys, the performance of pigs is influenced by two factors. The one is the genetics, and the other one is the environment. So the environment masks the genetic potential of a pig. So the genetics or the genes of a pig, of any living thing, sets the potential, the upper limit of performance. If your gene says that you can be 7 foot tall, doesn't mean you're going to be 7 foot tall. It means because your mum might have been in a concentration camp, or she didn't have enough food, or she smoked, or she drank or used drugs and so on, and you're only 5 foot tall. So your gene says, yes, you can be 7 foot tall, but the environment knocked you back. The environment masked your genetic potential. Now, the environment in there is the food, the health, the housing, the management, and so on, is what's called the environment that affects it. So the phenotype is what you actually look like, and it's determined by the genotype plus the environment, and so on. So yeah, but good genetics means that you've got pigs that got the potential to grow very well. Now, if you don't feed them, or you have shitty housing, or they're cold, or they got sick and they were stunted in the early stages, they will never reach their genetic potential, and so on. But it doesn't mean they don't have it, and so on. But guys, if you have a piggy that's stunted while it was young, don't throw good money after bad. They will never catch up, and you will not make a cent on them. Get rid of them, start again, especially if you're planning to buy breeding stock and not just grow it out to sort of a light pork and get rid of it, start over again, because it's never going to do anything better than that. Okay, so just a bit more on genetics and so on. Guys, so we spoke about hybrid vigor from that crossbreeding and so on. And the thing is that different traits have got different heritabilities. And the problem is that your reproductive traits, which is damn important to us, with the amount of babies and the litter sizes and the survival rate of those things, is low hereditary. The carcass conformation and the growth things are higher hereditary. So we can make fast progress with flavor and meat quality and average daily gains and all those things. We can make it in a short time. We can improve our herds in those traits very fast. But the breeding parts is low hereditable. And that is why the best way to improve your breeding, your genetics, is through hybrid vigor. Number one, the best tool you have in your toolbox to improve your herd is hybrid vigor, which means crossing two breeds, but the best of two breeds, not the shitty ones. Okay. And then, of course, improving your environmental factors with better health, better housing, and so on. And, of course, if you cull out the shit in your pens, then your average is going up as well. But if you cull all the bad ones, the sows that give you small litters, the piglets that do not grow properly, get rid of them. That improves your average of your herd, and do not breed with them, because they will keep on dragging you down. So reproductive traits is low in heritability. Your gain, your meat and carcass conformation traits are higher, and medium and high in heritability. So use hybrid vigor, improve your environmental factors, and cull out the rubbish to make gains. Okay, now guys, so some traits in your body is determined by one or two genes. If you know your ears, you got two kinds of ears. You either got a bell at the bottom of your ear, or you've got the bell is grown to your head. So you either got a bell or you haven't. So there's a gene that says, yep, you got it, or a gene that says, no, you haven't got it. So it's 50-50. So a small amount of genes, not just one, but a very small amount of genes determine what kind of ears you're going to have. Eye color, a little bit more. There's 5 or 6 different eye colors and so on. But yeah, a small amount of genes. But things like growth rates and so on, there's huge amount of different genes, So there's a huge variation and so on. And the population usually forms a bell curve, which means that there's a very few really shitty ones. Most of the animals is around the middle, around the average. And there's a very few that is exceptional. And it's, of course, these exceptional ones that you want to breed with and so on. If you've got a litter and there's 10 piglets and you've got 5 males and 5 females and so on, if you're selecting the best female out of there, you're at 20%. So it's a bit more than that, 16% and so on. But it's you're on the right side of the curve. Now, what that will do is if you start breeding that, especially if you bring in, okay, not keeping your own boar, but if you bring in a boar that is better than the average, then all your pigs that he fathers will be better than average. So you're moving the average to the better side and so on. So guys, spend as much, well, buy the best boar that you can afford. That's the best way to improve your herd is the boar. Because if you've got 25 sows, which means that there's 1 litter every week born, which means 1 boar can mate with 25 sows, 1 a week. So that boar in a year will have over 500 offspring. The sow, of course, will have, she's very good, 25 offspring. So you can see that the boar has got a much bigger effect on your profitability than the sows and so on. You still need a good sow. You work on getting the better ones there as well, more teats, all of those kind of things. Do not keep a gilt that's got less than 12 teats and so on. 14 is better. 16 is much better than that. I've heard of 18. I've never seen an 18 teater. But I've heard they're there. I think what they're doing is there's 2 blind nipples, and I think they're counting those as well. But they don't produce milk. But yeah, but if you've got 16 teaters, doesn't mean that they're going to give you 16 babies. But it means that if she does have 16 babies, she can feed them. Whereas you only got 12 and she's got 16, then you've got to foster them off if you have somewhere to foster them off and so on. Now, I said to you, a 25 sow unit is 1 sow a week, farrowing every week. But much better than that is to farrow 2 sows every 2 weeks. Still the same amount of sows in the same time. But if one of those sows have 15 babies, the other one has 7, then you can cross foster and have 10 and 11. Can't do maths quickly. But yeah, you can have 2 even litters and both litters will do better. There's the bigger litter because there's less of them sharing the milk, and the smaller litter, which is more productive than raising 7 babies and so on. So yeah, guys, I originally wanted to do how to select breeding stock, but yeah, I'm trying to keep our lectures a little bit shorter. We will actually make another stream on gilt and boar selection, but how to get what do you need to look for in a pig? Pigs on pigs and so on. What is a good pig? What does a good pig look like? What do you need? What do they need? And to last longer, to produce more, to stay healthy and so on. Okay, guys, please subscribe. These lectures are free. To make it possible for us to do this and so on. If you subscribe, you're making it more and more possible for us to do that. Yeah, as I said, this is a series. We've added sort of 4 or 5 topics in there, but we will keep on doing it. Please subscribe. Also push the little bell button, because then it will let you know, it will send you a reminder in 2 weeks' time, there's a lecture on at 4 o'clock, or that there's something new posted on our channel and so on. So our Training for Farmers YouTube channel, there's a lot of information. There's hours and hours of training videos on there. Go through those, but please subscribe and make it possible for us to do this more. Guys, thanks very much. I see you again in 2 weeks' time. Have a great one and a productive one. Thank you.